Welcome back.
Julie's.
All right, Kingston, we're gonna start.
All right.
Ready?
Yeah.
All right. Welcome back to the AIW Patreon page, and
Patreon.
we are here with a very special episode of my favorite match ever. Well, not ever in their careers, but one of their favorite matches in AIW at least. And I am joined by Eddie Kingston, home of the brave, last of a dying breed.
So.
And I am also joined by All Ego Ethan Page, and we are here to discuss their famed and maybe forgotten by some in recent memory, but definitely a hidden gem amongst the independent wrestling world. Their famed dog collar match, which took place at Hell on Earth 10. I have no idea what the year is. That's what Julian probably does because he's been researching this like crazy.
Yeah. So I started editing this vlog about the entire feud between me and Kingston, and I mapped it out in my head how I was going to edit it and display it and like present this story. I didn't remember anything that we did. Do you guys know that we used Sleazy Sparks being banned in America as part of the storyline?
I don't remember that at all.
Yeah.
That must have been like that must have happened though. That must have been like right when it happened, right?
That must have been live, right?
It was that weekend. It was the weekend that, and there was like so many like nuanced small things. Like when I left to do Ring of Honor on the Saturday, it was 3-show weekend for Wrestle Rager. So when we went back to Canada and came back, that's when Sleazy got popped.
Yeah. So I know we're gonna get to it, but now it's kind of coming back to me a little bit. So the Abdul the Butcher promo that Kingston cuts, he cuts that on the Saturday of that Wrestle Rager weekend, which Wrestle Rager has morphed into a totally different thing. But the first weekend was just 3 days. It was just 3 days of wrestling, and everyone was a little hot at the Canadians because they, instead of just staying in Canada or staying in Cleveland and doing the 3 dates in a row, Ring of Honor called, and you guys came Friday and then had to skip Saturday because you couldn't miss that gigantic opportunity as Ethan Gabriel Owens.
You like the way you said gigantic? It's a real little dig there.
Yeah, a little bit.
that gigantic opportunity for you to drive back all the way to Canada to probably do a dark match, and then so everyone was a little I don't know what the proper word was, but everyone was feeling a little free to take some digs at the Canadians, and Eddie said roll the camera, and he cuts this promo on you guys, and I believe he mentions how you went to Ring of Honor and all this other stuff, and he says he's Abdul the Butcher because when he's on the card the houses go up, and that really kind of, I don't know if that's the first promo that ignites it or what, but that really kind of gets everything going on. And then of course Sunday, 2 of the Canadians make it back. Sleazy Sparks does not make it back. She gets banned from America. I don't think she's been to America since, to be perfectly honest.
No.
Since that Friday of the first Wrestle Rager. But I do not remember any of the kind of booking and different things that went into it.
What I remember was, especially about that promo, if you want, Paige, I think that should be the beginning of your video. To be honest with you, because that's how it started.
The promo?
The promo I cut where it says I'm Abdullah the Butcher, because I went off and I was like, let me play off real life, like what's going on, because I already talked to you that Friday about Ring of Honor booking, and I was just like, yo, bro, I hope you get paid well, da 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 da, whatever. Take the heat. If you take the heat, it's not a big deal. Just make sure you get paid. I remember saying that to you. And then after my match, they were like, oh, we need a promo. You're wrestling, Page, and I was like, "Yo, roll the camera now." And I had that in mind, and then the Abby line was just because I heard an Abdullah the Butcher shoot interview once where he said, "Guys bring me in to pop the houses. I go for 4 months. The places are sold out. Then I leave. That's how I keep fresh." So for some reason that was in my head, and I just started blurting it out, basically saying,
I think we were joking, like probably that weekend, like about Bruiser Brody and Abdul the Butcher and all that stuff. And I think like that was probably like a joke that we had maybe on Friday night at the bar or something. And then it kind of evolved into that.
Because the reason why I remember that promo is because your next promo, you kind of had to come back and be like, AIW's my house. I'm the god of AI. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think the promo I did before you did that set it up. You know what I mean? Because like I was trying to be the guy, like, no, you left AI without even knowing. I just wanted to use real life in this case. And like, oh no, Eddie said Ethan Page turned on the fans of AIW. Here you come, next promo. And you're like, no, I didn't. Fuck you, whatever. And then I remember, I think I shipped it away when you were like, we can do this right now. And I was like, nah, I'm leaving. Oh, yeah, I left and said, Duke, did you pay me to fight twice tonight? And he said, no. I said, okay, bye.
Yeah, that was like the very start of the feud was at Absolution. I just kind of turned babyface against Gargano. And then my thing to do right after was to confront you because you started pretty much like burying Biggins and Thorne on the mic. And I like interrupted you. Yeah.
I remember screaming that like guys are leaving you to go to Ring of Honor.
Yeah.
Because I just wanted to play. I don't know. I like playing off. If everyone's good with it, I like playing off real life so it can,
For sure.
So it can like, it's funny when something's from real life, it gives you more emotion, and that's what we're selling.
Oh, and
I think what made this kind of work was it was for people that don't really know, especially this trio that is talking right now, is we really bust each other's balls and we get personal and it makes us laugh. And
for sure,
everybody was everyone understood that Ring of Honor at that time for you, where you were in your career, that was an opportunity. However, we did not let you forget that opportunity was coming at the expense of AIW whenever we could.
Because you guys brought that up for like 3 years.
Well, and and I wish Biggins was still here because Biggins would know every intricate thing that we ever said that weekend because his brain was just a vault. But I think, from our standpoint is so, like as a promoter, like there's guys that you book and it's whatever. And from Biggins and I, like Eddie Kingston was Eddie Kingston before we booked him. You know what I mean? So like it's kind of like we look at Eddie Kingston a little differently.
Yeah.
And Ethan Page, who was like, and not to disrespect or anything, but you were kind of like an unknown guy when we started kind of taking the time. So it was more like, like Eddie Kingston was like our adopted child, and like you were like our child, and like our child had left and turned his back on us, which that's the business. But we were a little harder on you just based on that, and we knew that you weren't gonna say no to Ring of Honor. Nobody expects you to say no to Ring of Honor, but we definitely took that kind of relationship that we had with you and had fun with it and made sure to let you know like, hey, like you're kind of fucking us, and then of course now your current employer, they fucked up that whole weekend for us, which is why we had to do which is why we had to do the the whole weekend anyway, because that was for that was supposed to be Grado's first trip to America. But I think that what the point I was trying to get to though is what made this thing so unique, to go back on what Kingston was saying, is it was a thing that we were all busting your balls about and all like always ripping on you a little bit about, and in fun, but like especially behind the curtain, which fans would never see this. It was just like, like it was a locker room. It was just like taking shots at you, like, oh, fucking, here comes Ethan Gabriel, and like, just always just kind of like, and like everyone was proud. Everyone knew that was a big opportunity for you at the time. You had not done too much at the time, but we were definitely not going to, miss an opportunity to rip on you a little bit, especially. I mean, especially Biggins. Like Biggins loved that shit. Biggins.
Oh yeah.
Like I talked to Colin Delaney like a couple weeks ago, and he told a story about how like the first time he came in for us was some deal that we had worked out with Dalton Castle, who wasn't not even we don't even know if he was a trained wrestler at the time. He worked out this deal for Colin and all these guys to come to AIW for like $100 only for like the whole car. So then, years after that, after Colin becomes a regular, Biggins would always, if there was somebody like important around, Biggins would always be like, this guy, I used to get him and 5 of his friends for $100, and now he wants, like I used to pay him in pencil shavings, and Biggins would always make these jokes depending on who was around.
Yeah.
And I think that is kind of how this whole thing morphs and it becomes organic, because there was like a little bit of I don't want to say it was resentment, but it was like a little bit of like, hey, like you're kind of fucking us on this Wrestle Rager thing, and because we had like, to our credit, whatever, we could have canceled all the 3 of those dates, and we didn't, and we were trying to make it work, and then we do the thing with TNA, and they pull Grado, and then we're trying to make it work, and then we have like our core guys, and then you, Alexander, and Silesia are like, oh well, we got to go back to Ring of Honor actually on the second day, and so it kind of morphs out of that little bit of realism to where we were kind of pissed off, but like we were also just like ripping on you a little bit, and like trying to make you feel bad, even though we knew that you weren't going to miss Ring of Honor. And then this promo, like we were saying, which is filmed on the night that you are not there, I feel like that really, because I remember we filmed it and I uploaded it Sunday morning, so it was like up and out there, and then that's really what kicks the angle in the high gear. I know that we were going to it, and like you guys did something at Absolution, and it really had not kicked into gear until this promo, in my opinion.
Yeah, because like there were so many, like there was the Ring of Honor thing. There was Eddie was like mildly throwing digs in Jakara while we were doing this angle too, and then the entire Sleazy thing. Like she was obviously supposed to be a part of the storyline for the whole time, but she got banned, and we had to like make shit up as we went and kind of make it up as we go.
I remember, like you said, the Jakara. They weren't digs at Jakara. They were digs at wrestlers. All the wrestlers who I thought all looked the same. That's why I called them cosplay wrestlers.
Yeah,
It wasn't an individual wrestler, but I remember at the time, for some reason, everybody either did Gargano's moves or the Young Bucks moves, and everyone.
What's different now?
Yeah, it's about the same now.
But it just all right.
But that is the beginning of that's the beginning of all that stuff, though.
Beginning of it. So I just started spitting that out, and like, I'm not a cosplay, whatever I said, you know what I mean? So yeah, I was bringing in, like I always do, I try to bring a piece of my real life with me. And I'm also the kind of person that's like, if you get mad at that, if I'm saying it in a promo, then you're a mark. Because I'm doing it for business.
And like, so what year is this? Like, just to know.
I want to say it's like, 2013 or 14, maybe 15 max, but I'm gonna say 13 or 14.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, well, if it's Hell on Earth 10, the first Hell on Earth was in 2005, so 2015. 2015.
Oh, you know what? I was with Viv because Eddie makes jokes about my 4 iPads.
Oh, yeah, that was a Biggins thing too.
that was such a Biggins thing.
I have Pop Biggins.
Because so 2015, that makes sense because it's the last ever show at Turner's Hall.
Yeah. Because then we had almost like a gap off, like time off.
No, we can't. We come right back in December at Mount Carmel, and that's here. Like the feud's over, and we do Hero Kingston at Mount Carmel. But
it restarts the feud that show.
Okay. I didn't remember.
It's like
that.
You do the dog collar match in November, then it's the Choo Choo Choos show. But I thought that was February.
Charge It to the Underhills was in December.
That's it. And that's Eddie versus Hero. And then Eddie's like, I beat everybody. Who is there left? And I come back out one show later.
You're like, I ain't
okay. Done. So it's 20. It happens in 2014. That's the year. It's the dog collar match is in 2014. I'm on the Smart Mark website right now.
Oh, perfect.
But so that happens November 28th, 2014. That promo. But for the cosplay thing, so especially at that time, this is where Eddie's generation kind of starts to, like it becomes different. You're starting to see different types of wrestlers in those, early 20 teens years, in which, Kingston's way of wrestling and that generation of guys that were hitting the roads and, trying to work and do all these different things now is kind of like around this time is when you see kind of the switch into the guys that are just emulators, and they're just emulating what they see and try instead of innovating what they see. A lot of the independent wrestlers at this time. So I remember Kingston was very like what the fuck is going on with the business right now? Because you think about that early 2000s, mid 2000s wrestlers like the Kingstons and the Heroes, and the list goes on and on. They were always trying to innovate and get creative. And then, now as we got deeper into the 2000s and, like 2014, for example, that's when you start to see the emulator wrestlers that are just watching YouTube and then trying to recreate what they saw on YouTube instead of trying to create. They were just recreating. And that was kind of like a weird thing for Kingston, because he was just like, what the fuck is going on?
Because I love the Young Bucks, and I consider them good people, but guys would take their stuff and not even try to mix it up. It would be the same exact spot. You know what I mean? And
exactly, they were just redoing it.
Yeah, I'm like, what are we doing? So that's why I'm calling people cosplay wrestlers. A lot of guys didn't like me for that. And I don't care.
But I mean, it did have some merit, because, a lot of people say like right now is the golden years of independent wrestling. I think the golden years of independent wrestling were in those early 2000s, mid 2000s, where guys were really trying to. They were, your generation of guys is, that early generation is the guys that they wrote the book on independent wrestling. So,
like the early Ring of Honor.
And so as these guys start to disappear from actual independent wrestling and go on to get signed and things like that, there were few of them. There were few of them, though, that were kind of left, and you were, the last of a dying breed from that era, and you started kind of playing that out in your promos and like letting people know. And I feel that this era of Eddie Kingston that we're discussing right now, this 2014, is like a very overlooked, I think, chapter in your career, because you were doing things that nobody else was doing, and cutting promos. And I think that this era is when you start to feel very comfortable in who Eddie Kingston is,
Yeah, especially around about 2011.
Yeah, so you're starting to, you know who you are, and you know how to deliver that promo, and you know how to express conviction, and you
Also,
know the story that you want to tell in every match. It's
it was no longer like, I don't know. I just felt so confident in the ring around that time, from like 2011, even now. I just felt confident that I could tell the story. You know what I mean?
and
And
I
I
think,
knew
like I said, I think that's when it gets overlooked, this like moment in time for you. I really do, because I think this is when it really clicks.
I also had good dance partners too. Like, not to just, I'm not kissing your ass, Julie, but at that time you had Josh Alexander, and a couple other guys who were coming up but wanted to learn. You know what I mean? And just didn't want to cop.
But that's because, like, what Thorne was just saying, like, about the golden age of indie wrestling. It's like, that's what we were watching. So, like, now we're getting to mix it up with those guys. So what made you, Kingston, feel like, okay, Ethan Page, this would be a cool feud? And Thorne, what made you be like, hey, this is the next angle I'm going to do with this guy after he just had a, like, hot little angle with Gargano and a heel run?
Well, from my perspective, and Kingston has learned this by this point, but going back on what I've said about the generation that Kingston comes from, and how he really, I think, was really coming into his own in these years right here that we're talking about, is Ethan Page. No matter what, you were getting some looks by Ring of Honor or whatever. I always feel, and this is probably around the time where I really start to figure it out, is the only way guys are going to get better is to work with guys that are better. And you were a guy that was really on the cusp at this point, and you had some really good matches. The year, I don't know how long you're in AIW at this point, but probably 2 years, maybe a year. And I think that it was like, okay, now obviously Gargano was like the gold standard for AIW at that time for us, because he just was a machine. And now, you have this, these awesome few matches with him, and now it's like, okay, like now let's put him in there with Eddie Kingston, a completely different wrestler, but a equally great wrestler for different reasons. And let's try to, like, diversify what Ethan Page's skill set can become, by putting him in there with Eddie Kingston. And I'll never forget, I know we'll get there, but I don't want to forget this point. So when we are at the dog collar match, or when we're in the discussions on it is going to be a dog collar match, Ethan Page was a very I will never gig guy.
Yes.
And
it's so true.
And that was like a very contentious point, to where you were just like, I'm never gonna be a guy that bleeds and this and that.
And you saying it over and over again, and we were like,
I didn't want to bleed.
And
the way you saying it over and over again made us think, like, does maybe he wants to?
And I don't know how we get to that point, but I think you realize that, to pull back the curtain even further, is to get sympathy for that baby face. That baby face needs to bleed sometimes to tell the story that needs to be told. And I think as this thing evolved, you understood that. But very early on, when the discussions are like dog collar match, you're just like, no, I'm a pro wrestler. I'm not a bleeder. I don't bleed. Like, that's not what I do.
Yeah, and it's funny because now here I am, like, whatever, 2020, we're not able to go to wrestling shows, and I come up with this idea to, like, recap my wrestling career. And I was like, oh, week 1, I'll do my tour of Japan. Like, maybe I'll do, like, a really important feud to me. And I was like, oh, yeah, there was that Eddie Kingston one where that match, I bled all over the place. I'm like, that was like a turning point in my career, because it showed, like, the audience something completely different. And people still bring that match and the feud up to me at the merch table all the time.
And I think what it really showed you is what you were missing. and what you've become now, because at that time you were like wanted to be, like you wanted to be Johnny Gargano, you wanted to be the super indie guy, like the super indie wrestler that has these like 5-star matches. And I think this taught you the importance of storytelling in wrestling, because your generation of not only wrestler but fandom did not see the NWAs and the bloody feuds. You saw The Rock and you saw Stone Cold and you saw promos and you saw sports entertainment. You didn't really grow up on pro wrestling, which are two completely different ideals. So this whole concept of like a drawn out like blood feud was kind of foreign to you, I feel, and maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like it was a foreign thing because you came from backyard wrestling and like then you became a fan of the early 2000s Ring of Honor and that style of wrestling. But like Eddie Kingston comes from like NWA wrestling in like Japan and all these different forms that
Just the stuff that growing up. That was
and that's my point is, and what you liked growing up and what you kind of lean towards is completely different than anything Ethan Page saw or was a fan of or understood. Like if you grow up on the NWA in Japan and all that stuff as a kid, you understand the importance of a feud and a blow off and like how it builds to it and makes it even bigger. To where Ethan Page likes the late WWF, which was like a couple weeks of TV, some promos, and a match.
Yeah, but let's not get it twisted. I was still a huge fan of Steve Austin, but no, my whole thing was when they told me to feud with you, I was all about it because I saw that you could cut promos and you can do moves. I was like, okay. Well, I was like, let's try to tap in to his seriousness, or let's try to tap into something maybe Gargano can't tap into him. In other words, let's make you angry and let's see how you react.
Yeah, there was that, but then there was also like, not to like pull the curtain back too much. I don't know if I'll use this clip, but
go ahead.
You taught me how to like work on the fly and kind of not by choice because like you refused to plan that much with me. Like
I had that done to me. You know
well,
what I mean?
I remember it was the last day of Wrestle Rager, so the Sunday. It was like our wild brawl, and you were just like, I don't know, let's just go out there and fight. What do you mean? And I was like, no, but I want this to be epic because I also felt guilty about going to Ring of Honor. So I was like, no. And then you were just like, yeah, well, this is what we're going to do. So, and we did. And it was awesome.
I said, this is the finish. That's all you need to know.
And it was awesome.
The reason why that match sticks out in my mind is because I freaked you out because you really thought I separated my shoulder.
Yes, I thought you separated your shoulder for real, dude. And so did everyone because, like, you were going in the door frame and banging your shoulder, ring post banging your shoulder. There was like I said, like there's a lot of like nuanced stuff that like came off really, really, really well.
On NXT trying to pop her shoulder back in.
Yeah.
Hey, man, she took that from me, even though she never.
Thorne, I have a question. Why didn't you put me over in the dog collar match? Why'd you keep it going?
Because I thought that you did not need to go over to get the support and reaction. I think the visual of you bloody and showing fight when you were this just like, entertaining whatever guy, like, you were you were a wrestler, but like this, I felt that, that visual of you bloody and fighting, and Kingston is just like a rabid dog, and you just do not want to give up. Like, I thought that was going to do more for you than winning. Like, you win and it's over, whatever. But you're bloody, and you showed fight, and, it changed people's perception. You know what I mean?
for sure. I totally get what you mean. Do you know how long this feud was? Do either of you know?
It went to Absolution 10, I believe.
So a full year.
Really?
Yeah, a full year. That's not something people do often, especially on the indies.
And I'll never forget this. I'll never forget that you were with Evolve at the time for Absolution 10. And
yeah.
Gabe and I have not had the best relationship over the years, and
Ready for this, Eddie?
And I've been outspoken towards him, and like not one to be bullied by him as he was known to do to other promoters. And Absolution 10 is the same day as Evolve, and there are several people ready for that are booked for AIW, and obviously that are Evolve wrestlers. And Gabe tells Ethan Page, I believe it was you, that you and Gargano and somebody else are free to do AIW, and to tell John Thorne to hate me a little less. It was something along those lines.
It was true. Look, I'm always ready to talk shit about Gabe Sapolsky, but dude, this was probably the nicest thing he's ever done. He's letting us come do it because he knew it was like the biggest show. Obviously, Gargano having way more stroke and pull with him, and I even think I even traveled with Gargano, or he flew and I drove. But either way, it was New York City, which was atrocious to get to and from Cleveland, but we ended up making it work. And I want to say maybe it was hot sauce.
Yeah. Maybe I don't know if he was in Evolve at that time or not, but I do know that was like a big thing because we would always plan our dates, and then Evolve or any of these other places, they would just do dates whenever they felt, and I was like, oh great, like, and I don't know if it was Gargano or what that had the stroke, but also props to him, man, because Gabe was like his meal ticket, and he wanted to do Absolution instead of Evolve too. So, that I don't know if it was planned to go a full year. I do know that if Silesia was there, it would have been easier to fill that whole year, because Eddie was with the Duke, and I think that was the initial thought process was the things that Silesia and the Duke could as well. But I think that it goes Russell Rager straight to Hell on Earth. I don't know if there was a show in between.
Yeah, because there was, I want to say, no, you're right. It's Wrestle Rager right to Hell on Earth, because Wrestle Rager's where I put the chair back on my neck, and I tell Kingston, like, this is how you do it. Like, come and finish me off. And then, like, the Duke kind of holds him back, and then I make the challenge for Hell on Earth. And then,
So I'm looking right now, and we did a girls' night out in October. So you guys go from September 7th to November 28th. There's no show. Maybe you guys did some promos. I'm not sure. Maybe you didn't, but that's the gap between. There's no show from September 7th to November 28th for you guys.
Okay.
Wrong by thinking that promo you cut when you put the chair back on your head. Was that your idea? And did the people react to it? Because I think I remember now a little bit that the people were like, "Oh shit."
Yeah, I know. I don't know whose idea it might have just been like a spur of the moment thing, or you might have told me to do it. Like I don't remember too well. I do remember the reaction though, because like people were like, "Oh shit!" Like this is not something we've seen, which is exactly what Thorne was saying.
It wasn't a cheer. It wasn't a boo. It was a legit like, "Oh."
Oh shit! Yeah. Because that same day, that same like segment, you throw me over the top with the chain around my neck.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's how we got to it. We did something with the chain to kind of lay the groundwork.
Yeah, and like it was awkward in the like Turner's Hall. Like people were freaking the fuck out. It was crazy.
I told you. I do remember that because I'm screaming something religious.
Pass out, die.
Yeah, I was also like saying the. Oh no, that was the dog collar
That was
match.
dog collar, where you do the entire prayer. Woo!
Yeah, where I did the Our Father, and that got people like, what the fuck? While I'm beating down and you're bleeding, and I'm saying the Our Father because at the time you were calling yourself the god of AIW.
Yeah, like, okay, how about that, Thorne? Would you ever let someone do a gimmick like that in 2020?
No, probably not. I'm looking, so I'm like, I'm looking through like different lineups, and like I'm trying to figure out where we went from there. Like, you were not advertised on anything that happened in December, but Josh Alexander is. I would
Yeah,
assume.
so that's when I run in. So
Okay.
Hero versus King, I run in on King. We do a little thing, setting up Gauntlet, which we fight each other in the Gauntlet and fight to the back. And like me, him, and Ricky are pretty much the final three. And I get eliminated from the Gauntlet by going through the middle behind the ref's back. And the Duke is like, he just went over the top, so they throw me out. Then Duke runs in and I make the save. And then that sets up pretty much like a 6-man tag.
Well, before you even get to that, a little wrinkle that I just saw, like I just put together when I'm looking at these lineups is, and it kind of adds to how this stretched out for a year, is in February of 2015, I Choose You. That is the show in which Tim Donst relinquished the title.
Oh, that's for the 4-way.
And we do a 4-way. It's Kingston versus Page versus Alexander versus Ricky Shane Page.
That's right.
So, and we tell that story a little bit there as well. So, yeah, I mean, it's crazy that this went a year now looking at it, but
well, the cool things too, like while I'm editing, I'm watching it all pretty much like streamline in order. So the very first promo I cut is about how Kingston doesn't give a shit about being the champion of the company, and all he wants to do is like cause destruction, and how I've won the title twice, but I didn't feel like I ever won it because it was really short. So then I get all these title matches later in the feud, and they're all cost by Kingston or the Duke. So like that whole story, even to become number one contender, he costs me my chance in the Gauntlet. So the whole thing is like pretty tied in well when it comes to like storytelling as far as indie feuds go.
And the best part about that is that was all on the day of. You know what I mean? Like we all had ideas how it could go, but until it was me, you, Biggins, and Thorne together, nothing came together until that day.
And right, and I guess I'll like just let people understand like my booking philosophy or how we really do it is, I'll have an idea on where we want to go, but I'm not like a micromanager booker to where it's like you got to do this, you got to look at the hard camera at this time, here's where we can bury Gabe, but
hey, I'm like that too.
yeah, you'll write out everybody's moves they gotta do.
Don't let me do the Uwanagi suplex that I've been doing for 18 years, but
because it's my finisher, bro.
But I'm not like a very over micromanaging booker. Like I'll know that I want this feud to go from here to here, and then sometimes I'll have little ideas, like small stuff, like very vague stuff, like the Duke or Kingston will cost you the gauntlet here, and they will cost you this there. But I feel like the best stuff happens when it is a collaboration, and I could say, here's my blueprint. This is how what I want to get to. How are we gonna get there tonight? And because my thought process is I'm hiring wrestlers for the day, and I'm hiring them based on their knowledge of what they can do. Like, I don't want to hire somebody and then tell them how to do it my way. You know what I mean? Like, it is, I think that is just counterproductive as a booker, wrestling promoter, or whatever you want to call it, because you are hiring a person based on their skill set, and a lot of promoters and bookers do not allow you to use your skill set as a wrestler. And I just feel that I get the best stuff when it's just a collaboration of other parties, all the parties involved, and and then sometimes it's like, well, like Eddie will pitch this, and it's like, well, okay, like let's tweak it to this, and then Ethan Page will come back. Well, how about this, and this, and then it's like, then you get the final product, and then somebody that is not to be overlooked is the Duke. The Duke always has some pretty decent ideas and contributions, and he's a guy that knows his heat, and he knows how to get that heat, and he knows how to use himself very good in these situations.
That's why, like, to put Duke over more. That's why even nowadays in 2020, you put certain young guys with the Duke.
Right. Exactly.
And also he can help them and tell them like what gets heat, what doesn't. Because man, people in AIW hate.
And like he wasn't never a guy. I can't say for anybody else, but at least in our feud, he was never a guy that was like, "What about me?" Like he understood that we had like a story to tell as a group, and that's what we did. And like he was never like, "Okay, but I got to make sure I get my shit in." It was like, "Okay, what do you need me for?" Nothing. Okay, no problem.
But also, we always had something
for sure. Why waste it?
He was just another toy for us to.
Yeah.
And I really think, the more that I'm kind of remembering some of this, I really think that, there were a few instances where Sleaze wrestled, and, she was doing the Girls' Night Out shows too, and she had a couple, like J-Lit appearances and stuff like that. But
she beat Kingston in a singles match in J-Lit.
Yeah. And I really think that there was a lot of that was going to tie in, and I think that a very vague blueprint plan was to do like a Beulah McGillicuddy Bill Alfonso do Silesia thing at Absolution, where they were gonna blow it off earlier in the night to get to you guys, so you guys were just gonna be one-on-one.
Yeah.
And also the thing too is we had to, a lot of things on the fly, like story-wise, because Silesia couldn't be there, and then we had to add in the title because he got sick. You know what I mean? So it was just almost in a weird way, all that bad stuff happening creatively helped our feud be more of the focal point in the company at the time.
Oh, and sure.
And I think that kind of stuff is what makes wrestling great, because I could sit here and I can write down a year of wrestling right now, but like so much shit happens in a year, and so much shit goes wrong, and so many like things change. Silesia Sparks gets banned. Like, who could have ever predicted she was going to get banned for 5 years? Who could have predicted, Dance was going to relinquish the title?
My worry was that either Ring of Honor, Impact, or WWE. That was my fear with the feud.
Right, and that was a fear too, and that's why I don't sit and I map out what everybody does for the year, because so much stuff changes, and I think it adds to the story, and it helps everybody creatively when you have to kind of beat this adversity that you're faced with for because like it's not like we were doing weekly TV. This is once a month. Maybe there's a month off in between there. So it's like a lot could happen. You guys could be on another show and get hurt, or so much could happen. So it's like, that's why I think when you get together and you get the creative juices kind of flowing and you're bouncing things off of each other, that's when the best stuff happens.
Yeah, it's also like, let's say Ethan saw something in an old and he wants to mix it into ours, or if I was watching something that week or something reminded me of like, the Horseman did this with Rock and Roll or something, you know what I mean? And then everything would just come together. And that's the way I like planning almost anything out. You know what I mean? It's get your outline, but nothing's for sure because everything can change. And you go with the moment.
Do you guys remember the blow off for Absolution? Were you guys happy with it or not?
I think, like in retrospect, like the best match of the feud is the dog collar match. I think it was hard to top.
Yeah, definitely hard to top. I just vividly remember coming to the back and being like excited to get Thorne's reaction, and Thorne was like, "It was all right. It was more like a handicap match, but you got what you got to do."
Well, that was the night where the Duke really wanted to get his shit in. Or because we didn't have Silesia, and like in retrospect, like Vader was there, and Vader probably should have been in your corner. You know what I mean? But like we weren't thinking like that because we had some other idea for Vader, and like and then it got to the day of, and I think a lot of there was the Gabe stuff, there was the border stuff, there was like, and I think that the payoff at Absolution, nobody, it got overlooked to kind of counteract the Duke. And it's, we booked this no DQ or last man standing, or I think. I quit. And it's like, well, the Duke's there. And we did not think, and that is mine and Biggins' bad, to figure out a way to, I guess, take the Duke out. And like, I've actually learned from that incident, though, to where there's been incidences later with the Duke, and it's like, you take the Duke out first, or you take this person out first, and then you get to the match, and then you work back to it. Like something with like Wes Barkley recently, to where it was like you gotta neutralize Wes Barkley first, and then you do the match, and then he works back later for some big cutoff. But at that time, we just did not have. I guess just the thought of figuring like how to neutralize the Duke. So what I envisioned was above and beyond the dog collar match, but in retrospect, the dog collar match is the crown jewel of the whole feud.
Now looking back at it, like me personally, I was a victim of me thinking too much of the story at that time. Well, Duke got to be in it. Duke has to do this. You know what I mean? Instead of being like, well, Paige, pile drive him, take him out for the night. You know what I mean? I was too concerned about Duke at that time and making it make sense with him being on the outside.
Yeah, like my brain wasn't where it's at now. Like we could have easily put Duke through a table early on, but to me, it was like, how could I give away that table to a manager?
We were thinking that.
You know what I mean?
And I do think, to what Kingston was saying, is sometimes when you are so invested in a story, sometimes it is to your detriment and to the detriment of
the match.
To the match, because sometimes you just got to go like, hey, fuck it. Like, nobody else is going to remember that part. It's going to be better this way. But sometimes you get so invested and you do want to tie up every loose end that it makes the match suffer for the final product. Where now I've learned, and I'm sure you guys have learned, is like, nobody is paying as close attention to the shit as the performers or the bookers themselves. And like, nobody would have thought twice if the Duke was just taken out or, something. But now, at that time, especially, it's like, Kingston was so involved, and he was leading the charge, and he was trying to make you learn. And I think that's the mode that he was in. But sometimes you have to know when you can turn it off a little bit.
And I didn't, you know what I mean? And even looking back at it now, I remember never pitching, because I have this thing with me where I never pitch for me to get a title.
Right.
I do that. I've never done it in 18 years. I'm not going to do it now because I feel it's just, I don't want to be part of that game. You know what I mean? And I just remember having an idea, because I cost you the title so many times and you would bring up the title all the time in your promos, was that somehow I get it. I think Ricky had it at the time. Somehow I get it from Ricky.
Josh Alexander had it, and then he got it from Ricky.
Because my thing was to get it off Josh and be like, look, I beat your friend, ha ha ha, whatever it was. And then you beat me at the blow-off. And then you get the blow-off.
And to remind you guys about this little tidbit, which is probably what threw a wrench in all of that, is during your feud, with Dance being eliminated, that brings Josh and Ricky into the title picture, and Josh turns heel with Veda Scott, and so that is the build, because it stems from that 4-way match in February. Yeah. But this is where Josh Alexander is going to retire. Absolution 10 is to be his last match ever, or one of his last matches ever.
Yeah.
And this is where he takes years off. So it was and then it gets fucked up even more, because 2 shows later, Ricky's like, well, I'm going to retire. And then he just never does, or he's like, I'm taking a extended
off,
hiatus. So then we gotta hot shot the belt off of him, and I think it goes back onto you at that point, and we had done so much to make you a baby face, but we have lost Josh Alexander, who we made a big heel, and it was I don't know what was going on. I don't know what was going on with Kingston, and
I think I was into a feud with Josh Prohibition.
Okay, yeah. And so then we're like, okay, I think then we just flipped you back heel to fill a spot. And and that's kind of the unfortunate thing too that happens when you're doing wrestling, is and you're throwing a curveball like that. Okay, we built we built you guys for a long time. We built Ricky and Josh Alexander for a long time, and then I think it's literally one title defense, and Ricky's I have to take time off.
Yeah.
And it's what the, now what are we going to do? So, that was kind of another one of those unfortunate impulse decisions, to where it probably would have made more sense now for Kingston to beat Ricky, and then you to continue chasing as a babyface. And now with, just more experience on my end, that's a no-brainer. At that time, when none of us were just that evolved, plus Biggins was also in the mix too, so it's it's kind of different now, to where it's I don't have to bounce an idea and then we debate it before we get it to the talent. Now it's I have this idea, let's go with this. And that's in retrospect, that, I think that's the most unfortunate thing that I'm just realizing now for the first time, is it would have been so simple for Kingston to take it from Ricky and you to continue to chase, and we could have got another 6 months out of it and circled back to a second dog collar match in which you got the win, and that would have been the perfect end to the story.
Yeah. That would have been awesome.
Again, hindsight's 2020, and also, like I said, Thorne, me not wanting to sucked into that political game. That's why I look at it. You know what I mean? Maybe other people don't. I just always feel like if you start vying for a title backstage, you're playing politics. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I never wanted to be that guy.
Exactly, and I never had the thought now until we've just kind of opened up this can of worms again, to where that would have been the perfect plan. But hindsight is 2020, and you don't, and I can't put myself into that specific time frame and tell you all the other factors that were going on around, at that time. But
there was a lot of things going on at the time.
Right.
With with Ricky, Josh's neck, Don's getting sick.
Yeah, it was a lot to kind of navigate, and it wasn't the most creative time, but now, as we talk, that would have been the perfect end, to the story, to circle back Hell on Earth a year later and, do that dog collar again or something, because I believe Julie, you win the belt at Hell on Earth a year later, and I think that was how we made sense of it in our head. Is last year you kind of got put on the map as this different performer, and a year later you've gotten the title that you've wanted for an extended amount of time.
Yeah.
Again, but obviously it would have been much better to go the route with the story that we had invested in so much time.
Okay, so I guess because we're getting close to an hour, what's your guys' overall thoughts on the feud? Me personally, I looking back at like the time period in AIW and like where the trajectory of the entire company was going, I think it was like the perfect mix of, like you were saying, top level guys from the independents and like a golden age, and then guys that were hungry and willing to like get the shit beat out of them and like earn their keep kind of thing is what really like grew AIW. And I think this feud was a big part of that, but it was a mix of all the guys that were there, like the Garganos, the Daunts, Josh Alexander, Kingston, myself. It was like the Wild West, but it was becoming bigger, I want to say, show by show.
And I think I think that the dog collar match was the perfect way to close the book on Turner's Hall and the old. It was kind of like the old way of things, and we evolved into the Mount Carmel era where things really expanded and really grew. And I think like it was just the perfect way to kind of like evolve as a company, as performers. It was like, okay, like we're leaving all the blood in this building, and when we leave here, we're going on to bigger and better things, and we all did. And it's almost, obviously you can't sit there and say like, well, this is the poetic end to Turner's Hall. But like it really, if when you think about it, it is, because we did that, and we go on to the Mount Carmel era, and all of our careers go into all these different directions from there. Yeah. And it's just the show's got a lot cleaner at Mount Carmel and a lot more polished at Mount Carmel, and that was kind of like the last of like the dirty Wild West era of AIW. And,
I agree.
It's kind of crazy that we did that match, and from there we all grow as just in the business as a whole. And it's just so strange to really think about it, like how poetic it kind of is that, like, we closed the door on Turner's Hall and never looked back from that moment.
Yeah, wow, just blew my mind because I never thought of it like that. Looking back at it, you know what I mean? So now that changes my whole answer. But I was gonna say, like, to take off what you're saying, it was almost like a love letter. Our match, our dog collar match, was like a love letter to Turner's Hall. You know what I mean? Like the blood and the guts and everything like that. That was Turner's Hall.
Absolutely.
I enjoyed it because I got to work with somebody who I thought was worth it. And I'm not trying to be an asshole and be like, I only work with guys I'm only going to put over guys that are worth it. But after looking back, a lot of promotions bring me in just to get their guys over, which is fine. But then they do nothing with them, or the guy doesn't do nothing with it. So then it gets frustrating. So you made me try to make this guy, but you don't do nothing with him, and the guy's not good enough to do it by himself. So when I look at being able to work with you, Paige, and see that how you took what we did and learned from it and grew from it into a better performer, that's why I like working with guys like you. That's why I'm so picky about who I put over or who I invest my time into. You know what I mean? Because I got to be confident in the guy, that the guy will also do it on his own. So I don't know. I look at it as fun, and we and you got closer from it. I think everybody did because we were all working together on it.
For sure.
Yeah, man. The best way to put it is the way Thorne put it. It was the last of the Wild Wild West for AIW.
And I couldn't think of the word I was looking for. And a love letter to Turner's Hall in that era is the perfect term or phrase that I was looking for, because really it was. And there's been some wild matches since, and some bloodbaths since, but you get that at what has now turned into Wrestle Rager, and like stuff like that. You're not getting like a puddle of blood in the Odeon, and or the Tadmor Shrine, and it really was just the end of an era, and I think it was good to close that era for all of us, honestly, and but it made us all better, and it just helped us all, and like I said, just even as a booker, like just talking, and realizing the mistake and how it was just right there in front of my face, and for whatever reason I didn't see it to continue it and to make it bigger. um you
Well,
know
yeah, I get that, but I also understood at that time there was a lot of things with we wanted Josh. Well, you and Biggins wanted Josh to be the guy.
right, and
You
it
also
was
you wanted to give it to Ricky because at the time the story was Ricky was the hometown boy.
right.
You know
And
what I mean?
but
That's
I'm saying, I'm saying, like, when Ricky didn't wanted to take his ball and go home, like, I think that the obvious choice should have been, you with a Page chase, and it could have been just so much bigger. And but like, you can't dwell on that missed stuff. But I'm saying, like, from a Booker standpoint, it made me just realize how to get better, and like things that sometimes things are just right in front of your face and you don't see it. And I just think that it is one of those matches that should be talked about more in modern wrestling, because you don't see a lot of blood feuds in modern wrestling anymore, or especially just on independent wrestling. You may get it in a Ring of Honor, or like a tier up from whatever AIW was, whatever you want to call that. But I do think that this match deserves a lot more eyes on it and a lot more credit, because it really was a work of art.
Thank you, man. Wow,
yeah. Thank you, Thorne.
Thank you very much, man. And Julie, thank you for trusting me. Because I remember that day when you did, you were not about it.
Well, you had a body of work that I knew I could trust you.
Thank you. We're not going to talk about you getting nervous after you gigged.
Oh, I'm going to put a whole little clip from the High Spots interview we did where you fucking just roast me.
But no, yeah, again, at the end of the day, working with you, Julie, was one of my favorite things to do. And probably still is, because me and you could probably, bro, I ain't done. You ain't done. When this whole COVID thing's over, we can do it again.
Yeah, we can run it again, no problem.
Yeah.
And I remember specifically I took it on my cell phone at the time, and I'm sure it's somewhere. But there's a photo of in the gorilla position at Turner's Hall when the match is over, and Julie still has the dog collar on, and he is just bloody, and his shirt's all bloody. And I hope you could find that photo wherever it is, because
white shirt on. I remember busting his balls saying, "Good move." I'm wearing.
But after the fact, I was like, it wasn't that bad, was it? Like, obviously, people don't understand how painful a dog collar match is. We haven't even gotten into that, but I think, like, the blood, and once it was all over, you realize, like, how important it was for the story.
Match. Oh, for sure. Yeah, I knew. And I have that photo, so I'll send it to you to make like a graphic for Patreon or whatever.
Yeah, honestly, thank you guys for talking about this, because I forgot how much I really did love that dog collar match. I totally forgot. I knew we had a good feud. But I just sitting back and talking made me realize how much I really did like it and enjoy it.
I'm excited for you guys to see the video and everything when it goes up. I'm going to do like a premiere. You want to jump in the chat on the day of?
Yeah.
As long as I'm available.
All right, sick.
Well, is there anything else that you guys wanna say as we wind this down here?
No, I'm good. I just wanted to get your guys' thoughts on that. I was so excited about doing this.
I do want to give credit though to Biggins and to Thorne real quick for letting anyway, I don't know about the other boys, but letting me have input and not also feel like my input wasn't heard. Because some guys let you talk.
Yeah.
You don't even consider your idea, and then you're like, well, I'm just not going to bring anything up anymore anyway. But Biggins and Thorne always digested my ideas, and then, came back with their own, but also still incorporated my ideas, which I think is just great booking, great promoting altogether. So I just want to thank you guys for that.
And wrestling just isn't a one-man show, it is a collaboration, and I think more people need to realize that. And the shows will be better, the talent will work harder.
Yeah.
Like I just found that it is just so much better to collaborate rather than to dictate.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, all right. I guess we will wrap this up then, and I look forward to seeing the video when it is complete. Where can people find that?
It should be on my YouTube, youtube.com/EthanPageVlog, or on my website, playedbyjulian.com, which gets plugged on here a lot, apparently.
Played by Julian. Yes.
I don't know.
Played.
I'm getting shirts made soon. I got a design. So what's up? Going to Pro Wrestling Tees. This one, but the other one's on.
All right, guys. Well, thank you for doing this, and I will hopefully see you guys sooner than later.
Yeah, no shit.
Sure.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.